You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Well, it's 7 o'clock, so like Representative Flanagan here, I'd like to start the meeting. The R.T.M will hold a special remote meeting on Wednesday, January 13, 2021 at 7 p.m. to consider and act upon the following matters. In accordance with Governor Lamont's executive order number 7B for the protection of public health and safety during the COVID-19 pandemic and response, the public meeting will be held remotely. Members of the public may attend and the meeting via Zoom, remote access by computer or by telephone. All attendees must follow the town meeting rules as cited in Chapter A 236 of the Code of the Town of Branford. Speak when recognized by the moderator and speak on the subject under discussion or debate. To announce your intent to communicate during public comment, use the raise hand feature or press 9 if attending by telephone, then 6 to unmute. When recognized by the moderator, all those recognized to speak must state their name each time they speak. Personal attacks on any person will not be tolerated and will be cause for removal from the meeting without warning.
Mr. Moderator, can I ask for clarification of that?
No, you're not. No, you're not. You can't talk to that. Sorry.
Well, can I speak to number
Item
one?
number one.
All right.
We're item one, roll call. The town clerk will call the roll. Or in some cases, Tom going to call the roll?
Representative Brockett, through you, Mr. Moderator, I'll call, should I call the roll and you'll record it?
Yeah, this is Representative Brockett. Yes, please call the roll and I will record it for the minutes.
Thank you so much. Okay, Representative Edelman,
Representative Edelman is present.
Representative Alphone,
Representative Alphone, present.
Representative Anderson,
Representative Anderson's present.
Representative Austin,
Representative Austin, present.
Representative Black,
Representative Black, present.
Representative Brockett,
Representative Brockett present.
Representative Conklin,
Representative Conklin is present.
Representative Everson,
Representative Everson, present.
Representative Erlanger,
Representative Erlanger present.
Representative Flanagan,
Present?
Representative Greenberg,
Representative Greenberg, present.
Representative Haken,
Representative Haken, present.
Representative Healy,
Representative Healy is present.
Representative Henschel,
Representative Henschel is present.
Representative Hines,
Representative Hines is present.
Representative Ingraham,
Representative Ingram's present.
Representative Jackson,
Representative Jackson is present.
Representative Kelly. Absent. Representative Leach is present. Representative Preet,
Representative Preet is present.
Representative Riccio,
Representative Riccio is present.
Representative Sember,
Representative Sember is present.
Representative Presta,
Representative Sresta present.
Representative Sires,
Representative Sires present.
Representative Sumro,
Representative Sumlo, present.
Representative Stepanek,
Representative Stepanek here.
Representative Sullivan,
This is Representative Sullivan is here.
Representative Torelli,
Representative Torelli.
Representative Hill,
Representative Toohill present.
and Representative Wells.
Representative Wells is here.
Okay, for ex officios, I believe I saw First Selectman Cosgrove
Present.
and Selectman Dunbar.
Present.
And who am I missing? Clerk Arpin.
Present.
Is there anyone else I'm missing? I think that's it. Okay,
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Brockett. We have a quorum.
Representative Flanagan, okay, thank you.
Can I make it? This is Town Clerk Arpin. Mr. Moderator, can I make a comment?
Representative Flanagan, go ahead, on Clerk Arpin.
Just for the record, Representative Kelly has resigned his seat.
Representative Flanagan here, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 2, moving on. To consider an appropriate approve amendment to Chapter A 236-4, C, Rule 4.3, Section 4.
Mr. Moderator, you didn't go over number 1.
Item number 3, to consider if appropriate.
Moderator, you didn't go over number 1.
Who's
speaking?
speaking here?
Wayne Cook is speaking. You didn't go over number 1, the review of the Zoom rules.
I already went over the rules.
No, he did not.
I
No, he
Absolutely did.
I did.
No, he did not, because if he did, then I should be able to speak to it, and he said I couldn't speak to it.
You can't speak to it.
Why can't I speak to an item on the agenda?
That's the rules. You're not.
No, it's an item on the agenda. Why can't I speak
You're not
to it
allowed
on
to
the
talk
agenda?
to this, Mr.
You make these things up as you go along?
Moving on. Item number 3. Consider- Item number 3. To consider.
I can't even do this right. What is the matter with you? I can speak to
Last time you're going to warn you. That's it.
item number 1.
Okay. Item number 3 is to consider an appropriate light ordinance for the town of Branford. Item number 4, to consider an appropriate creative ordinance pertaining to unused capital funds. And item 5, to review and if appropriate, approve amendment to R.T.M. Rule A 236-1 K4 to change the number of citizens petitions from the R.T.M. from 50 to 250. It should be pointed out that R&O did not meet. Representative Flanagan here, Representative Black. You speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This Representative Black speaking, Chairman of the Rules and Ordinance Committee. As I said, we did not meet due to conflict last month. And so I move that all these items be re-referred. That's items number 2 through 5 on our agenda. Move that they be re-referred. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Representative Flanagan here. There's a motion on the floor to re-refer items 2 through 5. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Representative Ingraham. I'll make that motion the second.
Representative Flanagan here is been seconded. Is there any discussion from members of the R.T.M.? Any discussion from members of the R.T.M.? Hearing none, is there any discussion from members of the public?
I have a comment, please.
Who's speaking?
Wayne Cook speaking, and I'd like to ask how you can re-refer all these items when you didn't even go over number 1. I mean, I would like to know really what's going on here. You're supposed to review the Zoom meeting requirements, and if those are the ones, no, hang on a second, please. If those were the ones you read in the beginning, and you said I couldn't comment to them, well, then why, as being an agenda item, can't a citizen speak to, in this case, agenda item number 1?
Representative Flanagan, Representative Ingraham.
Representative
I don't want to hear from Representative Ingraham. I want to hear from Representative Flanagan.
No.
All Representative Ingraham does is mute people. I don't want to hear from him. I want to hear from the moderator.
Representative Ingraham, go ahead.
To point out to everyone that wants to listen, those are rules of the R.T.M. Only members of the R.T.M. can speak to them.
No, that is absolutely wrong. What is the matter with you? Here's the point. Members of the R.T.M. handle procedure. You always talk to rules. I've been in many, many committee meetings where we speak to rules. So
Representative Flanagan.
how are you making, no, I want to speak.
No, you can't speak to this. It's not speak, it's not
No,
debatable.
you're wrong. You guys are just making up
That's it,
rules as you
Mr.
go
Cook.
along.
That is it, Mr. Cook. I'm not gonna
You're
remind you.
wrong. You're absolutely wrong.
I'm not gonna remind you
It's a
again.
matter of procedure you can't speak to, not a matter of rules.
You're out.
You're wrong. You know, you're just twisting it.
That's it. Representative Black, are there any other members of the RTM wants you to speak to the motion on the floor for item 2 through 5? Hearing none, is there anybody from the public that wishes? Hearing none, the motion, this is Representative Flanagan. Hearing none, the motion by Representative Black to re-refer item 2 to 5 passes. Moving on to item 6, to consider and if appropriate, approve the contract between the Board of Education and the Branford Education Association from July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. Representative Preet.
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Sullivan. I just have to recuse myself from consideration of this item and discussion because my wife is a member of the bargaining unit, and so I receive, I get some financial benefit, I guess, from the contract. So I need to recuse myself. And as other times when I've recused myself, I think Representative Edelman will be able to text me when the discussion of the item is over.
Representative Flanagan here. Thank you, Representative Sullivan. Town Clerk will, clerk will make note of that. Representative Preet, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Preet. The Education Committee met remotely on Monday, January 4th. A quorum was achieved. We met to hear the details of and to vote on the Branford Education Association, the BEA contract. Superintendent Hernandez, Chief Operating Officer Neal, and the Board of Education Chair Prinz gave a thorough and detailed explanation of the BEA contract and how it was negotiated. Focus of the contract included the process was conducted in a very professional manner. The contract was settled in mediation. It's a 3-year contract with increases of 2.71% the first year, 2.8.4% the second year, and 2.75% the third year, totaling 8.3% over the life of the contract. And as you stated, the contract runs from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. The settlement award is in line with other contracts recently settled throughout the state. Healthcare contributions from the teachers was increased by 0.5% a year. Teachers will now contribute 8.5% the first year, 19% the second year, and 19.5% on the third year. There is no salary step movement in the first year of the contract. The contract will add approximately $2.1 million to the budget salary line. However, I want to be clear that this is a snapshot in time. So with the retirement of senior staff throughout the 3 years of the contract, and that senior staff being replaced by less tenured teachers, that number is going to fluctuate. The committee voted to approve the contract by a 4-2-1 vote. Representatives Anderson, Jackson, Sember, and Sumro voted yes. Representative Hines and Preet voted no. And Representative Greenberg abstained to allow herself more time to review. And I put that in the form of a motion.
Representative Flanagan here. There's a motion on the floor to approve the contract. Is there any discussion from members of the RTM?
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Preet. If I may make a comment before we start debate.
Representative Flanagan, go ahead. Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Preet. And if I just want to make a brief statement before we get into a debate, and before I'm tasked with being anti-education or anti-teacher with my no vote, I just want to explain the reason for my no vote. And while our school district has its challenges, I sincerely believe we have a staff of tremendously talented and dedicated people. With an extremely trying year for the teachers and administrators, I believe they stepped up to the challenge and should be rewarded for their efforts. My concern is not with the reward, but with the size of the reward. By giving our largest union the largest increase, we may be setting an unsustainable precedent going forward. So my no vote should in no way be perceived as a vote against the administration or the Board of Education. It's just one representative's concern of being mindful for not only our children, but also for the burden put on the rest of our town. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Representative Flanagan, thank you, Representative Preet. Is there any discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Riccio? This is Representative Flanagan. Representative Riccio?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Mark Riccio, and I'd like to just take a few minutes and talk about what's in front of us. First of all, I will not be supporting the Branford teachers contract this evening that is being presented by the Branford Board of Education. First of all, like my colleague, Representative Preet, I would also like to go on record by stating the Branford teachers do deserve a raise, but that raise should be consistent with other town of Branford departments. What I am against, and what many other R.T.M. members are against, and I think you're going to hear that this evening, is the teachers union is asking for an 8.3% increase over a 3-year period. And I just averaged it out, which translates to about a 2.7% average increase per year. I've been very consistent in the 10 years that I've been on this body of making sure that we keep salaries, in line. This year is a very different year. And I've been talking about the COVID-19 pandemic for the last 10 months and how the pandemic has shut down our country, it shut down our state, and it actually shut down the town of Branford. These are extremely challenging economic times for all Branford citizens, including single parents raising families, especially those that have single incomes, small business owners running retail business operations, including restaurants, hairdressers, barbers, and other storefronts, challenged with meeting payroll, paying rent, and most importantly, keeping their doors open. Parents that are working from home, attempting to do their jobs, and also monitoring their kids to make sure they're studying as they have to endure the remote schooling process. These citizens have made enormous sacrifices. And it's time for some of our town employees and our teachers who are guaranteed a paycheck to make some sacrifices. Teachers union is asking for an 8.3% increase. I'll repeat, an 8.3% increase over 3 years, while inflation rates are below zero. And I'm going to show, would like to show a chart, please, and I'll share my screen in a second.
Flanagan, go ahead, Representative Riccio.
Here's the rate of inflation since 2000, okay? Inflation has not increased over 2.5% since 2011. The numbers don't lie. Here's another illustration. Going back to 2012, where out of, let's see, that's 9 years, 3 of those 9 years, you haven't even had inflation over 2%. Yet we're giving, the union is asking for a 2.7% increase, which in my opinion is just too much money. The other concern I have for this contract is we are setting a precedent for future town contracts. And we're going to have to deal with the school administrator's contract again this year. And historically, we know that school administrators are not afraid to ask for a lot of increases in their salaries. And you all know, I've presented and have concerns about those administrator contracts going back 10 years ago. As a matter of fact, I will remind my fellow R.T.M. members, my very first meeting 10 years ago, when we were going through some very difficult economic times with the Great Recession, the union came in and asked for huge increases for the school administrator. And this body worked together, and we decided not to support that contract, and we sent it back to the union. And I believe what happened is they did not go back to binding arbitration, but the union and the Board of Education got together and they said, okay, maybe we're asking too much money. And they came back with a lower increase. They got increases, but it was a lower increase. And once again, I'm going to say, and I'm going to repeat with my colleague, Representative Preta saying, we are not against giving raises. We are against the size of the increase. And I'm going to say something else that's going to be very controversial. I'm sure Superintendent Hernandez is not going to like what I'm going to say. But, I looked at some reports today, and I looked at the top 87 schools here in the state of Connecticut of how they are rated. We are ranked 58th out of 88 schools that were on this report. So, what are we delivering as a product? And yet we keep continuing to give raises to the administrators and to the teachers. And I'm not talking about small increases, large increases. And we're giving these large increases when parents are out of work. You've got people counting on the $600 or the $1,000 check that's going to be coming from the government. And I just think it's time that some of our employees here in the town of Branford, including the Board of Education employees, it's time for them to take a little bit of a sacrifice. We all are. I run a business. I see what my employees are going through. They're working from home. They're working hard. They're trying to manage their jobs. They're trying to manage their kids. And it's time that we take a stand here, ladies and gentlemen. And we need to send a message loud and clear to the union and say, we're not going to just sit back and let you guys push us over and give us these very large increases. We're not against giving you a raise. We're against the size of the increase. And I hope I can get my colleagues here on the RTM to agree with me and support me. I don't, and the problem with, a lot of people don't want to vote for, do not want to vote against this because, and they're right, we have to, we might be forced to send this to binding arbitration. Well, you don't have to send it to binding arbitration. The union and the Board of Education can get together, sit down and say, okay, guys, let's work out a number that the RTM is going to approve. And I think if you had contacted us before this evening or before the contract was signed and said, hey, how much money are you guys willing to give to us? That never happened, at least that I'm not aware of. So that's what I'm against. I'm against the process, or the whole binding arbitration process. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but speaking to my colleague, Representative Brockett, he and I spoke this afternoon, and Representative Brockett is a union attorney, and he explained to me really in detail what happens. Yeah, it might cost the Board of Education $75,000 to go to binding arbitration. Well, you know something? Don't go to binding arbitration. Sit down with the union and say 8.3% increase is too much. Go back and sit down with your union, with your teachers, and come back with something more reasonable. I thank you for your time, and I'm here if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan here. Anybody else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Stepanek.
Go ahead. This is Representative Flanagan. Go ahead, Representative Stepanek.
Thank you very much, Moderator. I would like to support Ricio's words and Preet's, Representative Preet. It's very hard for, I think, the people of Branford to understand. So we need to take a step back. The people of Branford are extremely generous. And if you may recall, many, many years ago, the teachers were not making very much money. Let's put it frankly, the private sector was way ahead and the public sector was way behind. So let's understand that from the beginning. But now we're at a situation where we're at the other extreme. And now we've been going through hard times for a long time. And I don't think we should be approving this 8.3% increase. Now, Representative Preet mentioned something very interesting that I don't think everybody who's watching on BCTV understands how important binding arbitration has been in kind of tying our hands. That people are very afraid to vote down a union contract, any contract, not just the teachers, but all the other unions in town, because of the nature of the law. This goes back to 1975, 1979, 1985. Binding operation basically means that if you disagree, then it goes to a committee of three. They're called arbiters. And usually the vote is always 2-1 against. And Branford ends up having to pay a fine in the form of very large attorney fees. And these fines, sadly, are charged the taxpayers of Branford. So basically, when I first got on the RTM, I was warned to be very careful about any salary contracts because we're definitely going to end up losing. That means the town of Branford is going to end up losing and have to pay a very high penalty. Now, that's terrible. That really bothers me because that's so unfair to the taxpayers of Branford. And I think, watching these debates on RCTV, they don't understand necessarily how afraid, and they should be afraid. I'm afraid because of the consequences of binding arbitration. Ricio is absolutely right. We don't have to go there, but very often it does go there. Nowhere else in Connecticut do people challenge these salary increases, but we must. A favorite word in government is sustainability. Everybody says it, but nobody practices it. We are not in a sustainable situation right now. We've gone to the other extreme and salaries are too high. The private sector is not only languishing, it's really, really suffering. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Representative Flanagan here. Is anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item?
And this
Moderator
is
Flanagan.
Representative Brockett, go ahead.
Yes, Moderator Flanagan, thank you. I respect all the comments made by my colleagues on the RTM, but I will vote in favor of this contract for a variety of different reasons. But let me put one issue to bed early. As was noted by Representative Preet, this was a contract that was reached in mediation. The next step after mediation is arbitration typically. That essentially means that the mediation session happened because after a long period of negotiations, neither the Board of Education nor the teachers union could apparently reach a contract. So they called a state mediator in to help them with the contract. One of the reasons I will support this is because this is exactly what it says. It's a collectively bargained agreement. It's an agreement between the Board of Education and the union. After a long period of negotiations of give and take, they reached this agreement through the process of a mediator. So if we were to reject this agreement, my best guess is it would not go back to mediation. It would go to directly arbitration, which, as Representative Stepanek said, is very costly, and indeed it is. And indeed, often you lose and there's attorney's fees involved. But more importantly, I reach out to support this agreement because this has been an extraordinary year for our teachers. They have had to learn a whole new system. They have had to deal with remote learning. They've had to deal with computers. They've had to develop new lesson plans. And these are the people that educate the children of Branford. we need to keep the most professional people here that educate our children here. We don't need them to be picking up with all their seniority and all their experience and going someplace else where they can make more money. I'd also like to just comment very briefly on the raises. As Representative Riccio pointed out, it averages out to about a 2.7% pay raise. Notwithstanding that pay raise, the teachers took a freeze for the first year. So they'll average a 2.7% pay raise without a step increase in the first year. That is slightly higher than the 2.5% that the rest of the town employees received over the past years, but it is consistent with what probably other teachers have made in the area or in the group that they're in, because that's what the mediator generally does. In addition to that, I think we all always want to earn just a little more than what the inflation rate is so that we can better ourselves. And in this regard, if they're getting 0.2% more than what other bargaining units got to start with, God bless them. They deserve it. They educate our children. They're important to our town. And for all of those reasons, Mr. Moderator, I will be in favor of this collective bargaining agreement. Thank you.
Hey, Representative Flanagan. Anybody else from the RTM? I believe Representative Sumero.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Representative Sumero.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Moderator. So I'm always supporter for the education and the teachers, because my both boys, they actually my one youngest one is in freshman, and this this means COVID situation. I can see that how our teachers are working so hard. Even though Saturday, Sundays, we are getting emails and kids are getting emails, means parents and kids, everyone. And they teachers, and I agree with Tom, that teachers never means a trend to take online classes and hybrid classes, because it is really hard and cause of a student in class and online. They are juggling between the two groups. So one is going to school and one group is at home. So they are doing two jobs. So I heartily support this contract, and I urge to all my RTM members that please support this contract. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan, thank you, Representative Sumero. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this?
Dennis, I would, Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead, identify yourself, please.
Tricia Anderson.
Go ahead and speak.
Something that Representative Brockett pointed out was that this contract is negotiated between the BOE and the union. The problem with this is the taxpayer is not represented in any of these negotiations. They are the union and the BOE, and they both have a vested interest in each other. So they're going to work together. But the person that's sticking out on the outside are all the taxpayers that have to pay for this. I love my teachers. I have a freshman in high school. I love my teachers. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. They do. They work very hard. I think in this time, 2.7 was the same raise that they got 3-4 years ago when we were in a different environment. Concessions need to be made. They need to be made today. Arbitration doesn't have to happen. They can go back to the drawing board and figure it out. I will be voting no for this. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Representative Flanagan here, thank you. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item? Representative Austin?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead.
This is Representative Austin. I just want to say that I've listened to everyone and what they had to say, and they're all very valid points. However, I would like to add that, yeah, the teachers had to work very hard this year. They had to come up with new ways of working. But that's not any different from many other people and many other jobs who have had to make and learn new ways of working during this pandemic. I support the teachers. I think they do a marvelous job. But I also feel that during this time, that 8.2 or 8.3 raise is just too high. I will not be supporting this bill.
Okay, thank you, Representative Austin, Representative Flanagan here. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this?
I'd like to speak, Mr. Moderator, please.
Representative Toohill, going to identify yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's Representative Toohill speaking. Just a couple of points about binding arbitration. We've heard about it from Representative Preet, Representative Riccio, Representative Stepanek has talked about it, Representative Brockett, Representative Anderson. I just want to inform the public what binding arbitration is. There's two state laws that govern these contracts. They were both passed about 30 years ago. At the time that binding arbitration for the teachers were passed, I believe our state averaged around 20th out of 50 states. Okay, our state then, out of all 50 states, it ranked about the 20th highest average public school pay. Okay, so in the last 30 years, as our property taxes have climbed, our teachers, the public school teachers in Connecticut, I believe for the last 5 or 6, 7 years, have averaged the highest public school teacher average in the country. We even passed Alaska about 8 years ago, I was told. So the point I'm making is that binding arbitration, which has been on the books for 30 years, state law, it needs to be reformed at the state level. And when people go to cast their votes for candidates running for state office, and this happens every 2 years, the public, the first question they should ask their candidates is, what is their stance on binding arbitration and what do they propose to do about it? Because it's costing us, as I said, these are property tax increases is what is used to pay, these raises. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Representative Toohill. Representative Flanagan again. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Moderator.
Representative Edelman.
Representative Edelman, go ahead and identify yourself.
Representative Edelman, thank you. If this contract is not approved, they are going to arbitration. Make no mistake about it. You don't tell a union that has collectively bargained an agreement, well, you're not getting that raise, go back and negotiate again. That changes the whole concept of the negotiations, puts the union in a lesser negotiating position, which is why they have the resolution of arbitration. So let's not kid ourselves. If we don't prove this contract, it's going to arbitration. You don't shift the balance of power by saying you're not getting your raise, too bad, now go back and negotiate a deal that's not as good as the one you just negotiated. That's not going to happen, and it's going to go to arbitration, and that cost is going to be incurred. In addition, I'd just like to echo Representative Brockett and some other statements concerning the sacrifices and the changes the teachers have had to make. While it is true that others in other professions and other walks of life have made concomitant and similar adjustments and have taken on hardships, every single one of those people, if they were in a union and had the collective bargaining agreement available to themselves and were negotiating a new contract at the expiration of a contract, would be advocating the same as any other bargaining unit. So the teachers shouldn't be penalized because they have a bargaining union and are able to collectively bargain for a new contract. And I will be supporting the bill, and I would urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Representative Edelman. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item?
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Preet.
Go ahead, Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just want to take a step back for a minute. And I had a follow-up conversation with the superintendent and with the chief operating officer after our education meeting, and basically asked them to kind of walk me through the whole process. And if, for those of you that don't know, this whole negotiation started back in late August, early September. But in their discussion or in their explanation to me, what I observed was we have a fundamental flaw in the whole process. And that flaw is that the RTM is tasked with voting on a contract that we have absolutely no input to. As to my knowledge, no one solicited any input from us No one solicited any input from the education committee before we went into negotiation. And, you know, if that's the way it works, that's the way it works. But I think we need to take a step back. We can't fix it tonight, but we've got other contracts that are going to be coming before us in the future. And the fact that we get handed a contract with basically either you vote for it or it goes to binding arbitration, I don't think is in the best interest of our citizens. So I think, you know, as a body, and I'm not talking Republicans or Democrats, but as a body, we really need to step back and look at the whole process. I had a very detailed conversation this week with one of our employees of the town who I have the utmost respect for. And one of the things that he said to me, and it kind of resonated, we don't really approve a contract. We validate it. We validate whether the contract is fair. So, you know, we can sit here tonight and debate. And as I said to the superintendent at the subcommittee level, you know, to me, it was a waste of time because I'm going to give him my opinion and he's going to give me his. But the fact of the matter is the contract was signed, sealed, and delivered with no input from this body, and we're the ones who have to vote for it. So not specific to the teachers, but for all the contracts that come before us, whether it's police, fire, maintenance workers, we need to take a step back and see and look at the process and how the process flows, because there's a fundamental flaw in it that we have to vote for something that we have no input in. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan here. Anyone else from the R.T.M. wishing to speak?
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Riccio. Can I just make one or two more comments?
Go ahead, Representative Riccio.
So what Representative Preet is saying is, and I think my colleague Representative Brockett will agree, the process is broken. What do we do about it? We've been talking about the process has been broken for 10 years. You know, as I said, 10 years ago, I fought hard with both sides of the aisle to take the administrator's contract and send it back to binding arbitration. I don't know if we decide not to support this contract tonight. I'm not a union. I'm not I'm not an attorney. I'm not a union attorney. I don't know if it automatically goes to binding arbitration. Some people have told me it will. Some people have told me no. The Board of Education can go back to the union and try to mediate it again. Okay. So I don't know what Representative Edelman said. You're an attorney, Dan. You might be right. I don't know, but I'd like to see if we can get an answer to that. The other point I want to make is, and I'm going to share my screen again. And this message, you know, this is really for Representative Brockett. I think you said something about a Representative Brockett that, yeah, everyone, when they negotiate a contract, whether they're a union, part of a union, or not part of a union, they all want to try to make, you know, extra money. That's the way we do it. You know, we live in a, you know, we're in a capitalist economy. Well, and I think you said we like to make a little bit more than maybe the increase in inflation. Well, let's give them a little piece of an increase of inflation. Here are the numbers right here. Okay, 2.5, 2.3, 1.5. In April and May, you had 0.3, 0.1, 0.6. 2019, you had 1.8. 2018, you had 2.4. 2017, you had 2.1. We're at 2.75. I'd love to sit down with the union and say, hey, we're not afraid to give you guys raises, and you need to get what you deserve. But let's come in with a market rate that is fair across the board. And then finally, I just have one message for Superintendent Hernandez, and he doesn't have to answer this, but I want to ask him, are you going to go talk to your parents this week? The single parent that's raising 2 or 3 kids that can't make their rent or can't put food on the table? And we know already here in the town of Branford, you know, we have Feed Branford Kids, because we got kids that are going home hungry. We got a private charitable organization making lunches for these kids. Are you going to go tell them that your teachers are going to get an 8.3% increase over the last 3 years? Because you know something, Superintendent Hernandez, my obligation and responsibility, I have a fiducial responsibility to the citizens here in Branford, the people that vote for us. And they're going to ask me, how could you give teachers an 8.3% increase over 3 years when we're struggling? And I'd like someone to answer, and I'd like to get that answer from Superintendent Hernandez, because I don't know what to tell them. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Flanagan again. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item?
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Brockett. I'd just like to answer Mr. Preet's question.
Representative Brockett, go ahead.
Yes. In answer to Mr. Preet's question with respect to the process, I absolutely agree that the process is broken and needs to be fixed. One of the things that other towns do, and I know from firsthand experience, is they send a member of the legislative body to the negotiations that take place between, for example, in this case, the Board of Education and the teachers. My understanding is that at some point in the past that happened in our town, but it didn't happen this time, and I don't know the answer to that. I haven't been on the RTM long enough. As to Mr. Ricchio's questions with respect to whether or not this moves directly to arbitration, the answer to that question is no, it doesn't have to move directly to arbitration. However, if we vote this contract down, you can rest assured that that puts the Board of Education in a very, very difficult position, because now they have to go back and ask the union to negotiate for something less than they've already negotiated for. So more likely than not, the union's going to probably say, no, thank you to the negotiations and move the matter directly towards arbitration. I don't know that for a fact. It's possible that they could sit down at the table. But I wanted to answer those questions. So thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Representative Flanagan, anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Preet.
Representative Preet, hold on. Representative Everson hasn't spoken on this yet. Go ahead, Representative Everson. Identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you, if I could ask a question of the school superintendent or the chairman of the Board of Education, given they are both on this call. And as to what Representative Brockett has just brought up, there was not a member of this legislative body as part of the negotiations, and seemingly that was part of the past. Could you clue us in as to why or how that came about, please?
Mr. Moderator, I'm happy to address that.
Identify yourself, Mr. Prince.
John Prince, Chairman of the Board of Ed. It's real important for members to know that throughout the entire process, and that is to say not in a part-time fashion, but for every session that we negotiated with the union, a representative of the Board of Finance was present, and more so than that, he was an active participant. So the sort of, and correct me if this isn't correct, but the caretaker of the town's finances had direct and valuable input into the negotiations around issues concerning money and healthcare. It's really also important to know that the negotiations are sort of a huge piece of the process is focusing on the market. And the market includes not only surrounding towns, which is a little bit unbalanced with towns like Madison and Guilford nearby, but also the market in our DERG, which is the socioeconomic grouping like polities, like towns. So those are two real important things for you to consider. And ultimately, someone made the point, it might have been Representative Brockett, if we were to go back to the union and say, we want to do this again and give you less than we agreed to at 4 o'clock in the morning on the last day of negotiations with an extraordinarily talented counsel and an extraordinarily effective mediator, I think I wouldn't want to repeat what they might say back to us. One of the things that's primary in the list of considerations for an arbitration process like this is the town's ability to pay. And it's anybody's guess as to what an arbitrator or a panel would be able to ascertain from the financial health of our town in terms of addressing where we are and what we would like to do with the renegotiated agreement. I hope that addresses Representative Everson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prinz. I appreciate that. This is Representative Everson. Given what we've just heard, and certainly the wealth that does exist in this town, I think we are given a contract to vote on. While I appreciate a member of the Board of Finance was actively involved, to my knowledge, a Board of Finance member does not vote on any contract. We, the representative town meeting, vote on a contract. So in the future, I think it would behoove the Board of Education to include a member of either the Education Committee or the minority or majority leader of the R.T.M. as part of these negotiations, as we are the body that votes on contracts such as this. I appreciate what every teacher does. God forbid I was ever in their shoes. It is not a profession I chose, and there's a reason why. And I think that these people at this time deserve a raise, and we are not the ones to decide. We are given this contract. Our role is to primarily a perfunctory one, unless we deny it. And then it's going to cost the town even more, as Mr. Prinz has just pointed out. So I don't think that's going to benefit this town, our taxpayers, our teachers, nor our children. Thank you very much.
Representative Flanagan here.
Moderators, Representative Ingraham.
Representative Ingraham, go ahead.
Representative Ingraham, I'd like to add on to Representative Everson's comments on the who represented the town. You know, the last at least two sessions, the contract sessions, someone from the R.T.M. was inside, knows, you know, the ins and outs of what the R.T.M. Wants and needs. They don't give out, you know, the information, just like, you know, Mr. Imperato wouldn't give out any information about the inside contract talks. We had that before. We're used to that, but it makes the R.T.M. more comfortable about these things when one of our members is involved, no matter who it was. So that was, disappointing. Found that out really at the end of the period, wondering, that's on. I didn't get asked to play someone like I did the last two times, nominate somebody to go over there. So, to the Board of Ed and the superintendent, really like to see that. I'm not saying it was wrong, but it make the R.T.M. feel better about what's going on, that they could have a member come up and speak up, after your negotiations are done. And I do think the R.T.M. plays a major role in approving these contracts. The R.T.M. is been very good about every contract in town, making sure that we get it done within 30 days, whether we have to have a special meeting, hold extra meetings to make sure we can get through these contract talks. So we do take it seriously. We don't let them roll off for the 30 days and just let them pass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Flanagan. Anyone else from the RT?
Mr. Moderator, Representative Jackson.
Go ahead, Representative Jackson.
I have a little bit of deja vu about all this. I'm old and my memory is spotty, but every time there's an education contract that comes up, it's what we pick on to determine that they're getting too much of a raise. I don't see that same care and consideration for other contracts like police, fire, and the like, town employees. But with all the really nice things that are said about the teachers and the difficulties they have during COVID, which I certainly can see every day, we still pick on them. So I don't want to belabor the point, but when we were in our education committee meetings, we did ask where these raises fell relative to other 3-year education contracts. And we were assured that these were in line. I think actually what Mr. Hernandez said was that they were slightly less than the average, very slightly less, but they were right about at the average. So I voted for this in committee, and I intend to vote for it tonight. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan here. Anyone else from the RTM
Yeah.
wants to speak who hasn't spoken yet? Let's see. Representative Toohill, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to follow up on 2 points. First of all, what Representative Jackson said, I believe that the superintendent, Hamlet Hernandez, said that there were about 89 contracts in the state that had come in, and the town of Branford's agreement, with the union was 0.1% less than the average. And then to follow up on what Representative Ingraham was talking about, this is my 30th year on the RTM, and we've always had a representative on these contract talks. Now, the person from the Board of Finance and the RTM, they can't vote at the conference, but they can at least be present. I don't know why there was none this year. In the past, I've been on the committee. We also had Vinny Abiadio was on once. Robert Imperato was on, and also the other one that was on the RTM recently representing the RTM was Lonnie Reed. But for some reason this year, it still hasn't been explained. The only one that was there was from the Board of Finance. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan here. Representative Preet, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to address the issue about
Just
who
a
was on the
reminder, Mr. Representative Preet, everyone speaking must identify themselves.
I'm sorry, this is Representative Preet. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I apologize. I wanted to address who was chosen to represent the legislative portion of the town with the negotiation. As I mentioned before, I had a follow-up conversation with the superintendent and with Chief Operating Officer Neal. And to be quite honest, they gave me a civics lesson on how this all worked. So before we point fingers at how the process worked, as I mentioned before, we have a fundamental flaw. My understanding, and unfortunately, I'm on the phone, so I don't know who's on the call, but I believe somebody said that the superintendent's on. So if I'm wrong with anything, please step in. But my understanding is the superintendent solicits the chairman of the Board of Finance for a body when negotiation starts. So my understanding is that the Board of Finance chairman is the one who picked who was going to represent the legislative portion of the town. So I'm going back to my original comment that we have a fundamental flaw in our process. So if this body feels that there should be somebody from the RTM and not from the Board of Finance, then we need to get in front of the chairman of the Board of Finance when the contracts are coming up and make those feelings known. So again, we've got a flaw. We've got a hook in the process here that needs to be fixed before the rest of the contract become due. And I hope together with a bipartisan consensus here, we can work together and get this fixed, because quite frankly, I haven't been on the RTM for 30 years. I've been only on for 8. But I'm really tired of getting contracts sent to me and my hands are tied. I either vote for it or it goes to binding arbitration. So this all needs to stop, and we need to fix it. And whether that means we need to bring in our state legislators to a meeting and have them explain what are they doing about binding arbitration, what are they doing to fix it. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to work together. It's not the superintendent's fault that there was no one from the RTM. It's not the Board of Education chairman's fault that there was no one from the RTM. It's the legislative body's fault that there was no one from the RTM. And there's no knock against who our representative was. I mentioned this in the past. Our representative is a lifelong friend of mine. We've known each other since grammar school. I think he's a fine gentleman. I think he does wonders with negotiations and with contracts. My objection was that no one on the education committee, and to my knowledge, no one on the RTM was approached to what we felt needed to be done with this contract. So, and I thank you for the time.
Representative Flanagan here. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item?
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Brockett. One last point.
Representative Brockett, go ahead.
Yeah. In response to Representative Preet's suggestion, I absolutely agree that we need to work in a bipartisan manner to review these contracts as they come up to the RTM. So I will volunteer my time right now to have a Zoom meeting in the future to explain binding interest arbitration from A to Z to all RTM members based on my past experience. At any time, the majority leader and myself can set it up and invite all Zoom members to attend such a proceeding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Representative Flanagan. Anyone else from the RTM? If not, if anyone from the public wishes to speak to this,
I would, please.
identify yourself.
It's Wayne Cook. And can I ask a quick
Go
question?
ahead, Wayne Cook, go ahead.
I want to speak directly to this item. I have 2 or 3 solid points, I think, to offer. But why was my video disabled? Can I ask that?
I have no idea,
So
Representative.
who's moderating the meeting and why is my video disabled? I'd like to know that.
Mr. Moderator, my video is disabled also. Peter Jackson.
Why is that?
Because I'm ugly, probably.
I really don't know, Mr. Cook.
You're better looking than I am, Peter.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Cook.
All right.
Go right ahead.
I think, well, I just want to go on record that the video was disabled. I don't think it was just a glitch, but nevertheless, I got a couple of points, and I said this to the Board of Finance a number of years ago, and I think it bears repeating. My wife and I had one daughter and have one daughter. And, when she went to Catholic school for a few years, and then we decided that she wanted to go to public school, so we were going to let her go. And we went back and forth, public school, private school, Choate, whatever. And the decision came to put her, somewhere, of course. So we went to Branford. And, and my wife was concerned that, public versus Choate, whatever, but we figured we'd take a chance. I just want to go on record and say this. Anyone that says that Branford's ranked 58th or whatever, it was the best experience of Catherine's life in terms of to that point. The teachers were excellent. Superintendent was the greatest asset this community could have in terms of education. He was always there for us. There were bumps in the road, as there are in any person's life or child's life, but they were always there to help us through it. And, here's the point I really want to make on top of that. Other than her parents or a child's parents or family, who's more important in their life than teachers? Who? I'd like to know. They spend 8 hours a day with these individuals. And, you can't give them enough money for what they do, in my view. We pay our lawyers $400 or $500 an hour. All right? We pay our plumber $150 an hour. Where does the teacher rank on that? I mean, for people to say, well, teachers, they work, sure they work hard, but they do a lot more than that. They help, they don't just help, in many ways, they raise your children. Now, this has got to be heard. I know you guys don't like to hear from me about anything, but for once, maybe I'm saying something that you'll listen to. Because the reality is that, I think that as long as it's fair, as long as it's a fair contract, and it seems like this is, and it's competitive with the other school districts, why are we even discussing this? What is I don't understand what the matter with this whole issue is. And I've heard it for 10 years. Representative Riccio said, well, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've listened to him say the same thing for 10 years. And it always goes back to binding arbitration and all this and all that. Well, if you're going to fix it, fix it. Because it's going to be another 10 years and we're still going to be hearing about this. I guarantee it. And I mean, forgive me for saying this, but I'm going to say it. If you want to start talking about the broken processes in this town, you got a long list. You got a real long list. But you won't let me tell you, but I'll get off on that one right now. The point is this: give the teachers what they deserve in a fair way. And this is fair. I think it's fair from everything I've heard. And, I gotta tell you, if anyone says that people don't get or kids don't get a good education in this town, our daughter, I'm going to brag for a minute, she just graduated from Cornell, as you probably know, under the most adverse circumstances that any individual could go through, not just COVID, but other circumstances. And, sorry? 1, 2, 3. And the reason she could do that in the way she did, she graduated, with honors, is because of the preparation she got in Branford. And the preparation did not limit itself to academic. It was across the board. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishes to speak to this? Representative Green,
I'd like to speak to it. Richard Atro, a member from the public.
Go ahead, Mr. Atro, go right ahead.
First of all, I appreciate what the teachers do, and they work very hard, and they had a very difficult year. However, we have to look at the financial aspect of this thing. And in light of what's going on with local businesses going out of business, people who lost their pay, people who don't know where their next meal is because they're going to either the soup kitchens or everywhere else to try to make ends meet. And the teachers, to the best of my knowledge, didn't lose 5 cents in this whole process. And I'm not saying they should have lost any money, but however, they didn't lose any money in the process. I think if they were more into the line of inflation of 2.4% versus 2.7 or 8%, I think it would be easier to explain to the public who is suffering right now to make ends meet why they got a raise above inflation when some of them didn't. Some people in the public haven't worked in 6 months. Everybody's worried about binding arbitration, and I'm aware of binding arbitration. However, if you don't go to binding arbitration, you just say, you know what, we're going to lose, let's not go, and let's pay them everything they want, then you lost already. So why not go to binding arbitration? The worst case scenario is you lose, and it costs you for the cost of binding arbitration. And I'll tell you what, I'm not sure exactly what it'll end up costing you. If you take that increase over the life of contracts, it'll be far cheaper to lose in binding arbitration and give it a shot than to pay them and then pay that money every single year. Because guess what? If they're making $100,000 this year and you give them $1,000, next year it's $101,000, and that money never goes away. So it's always a percentage of their earning. So I'm not a member of this body, but I am a taxpayer, and I hope this body rejects it. Let them go back and explain to them that it's not anything against the teachers and all the hard work that teachers do. However, you have to look at the whole town and everybody who lives in the town and what's going on in today. And today is an environment that's I've never seen in my lifetime, and I'm 75 years old.
Representative Flanagan here. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to this item?
One more follow-up, please, Mr. Moderator.
All right. You have to identify yourself every time you speak, Wayne.
Yes, Wayne Cook. Just quickly, just very quickly. To Representative Jackson's point, you guys as a body do pick on the teachers, because I've listened to it for the better part of 10, 12 years. Why don't you have these same discussions when it comes to every other department in this town? Mr. Jackson, Representative Jackson is 1000% right. Have these same discussions when it comes to the police and the fire and everybody else, but you don't. I've never heard them. I've never heard them during budget, and I've sat through several budgets. Nobody ever says that. Well, why not? Why are you picking on teachers? Of all the people in the world, as I just said, that's the last people you should be picking on. I mean, come on, you got to get with reality here, and be fair. You don't have to be fair to me. I'm getting used to that. But be fair to certainly the teacher.
Okay, Representative Flanagan here. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
Just a comment back to Mr. Cook. This is Richard Atro again.
Yeah.
I think we could be fair to the teachers if you gave them what the inflation rate was at 2.4% on average. I think that would be fair to the teachers. And I think you can explain that to the public. However, when you go to 2.7% in bad times, and as a business person, when I was in the business world, when times were tough, you didn't give out any, I got years I'd gotten zero raises. I got years when my department was cut, not the increase cut, but the bottom baseline cut to below what I got the year before. So I think we're more than fair if we came back with 2.4%. I think going to, on average to 2.7%, as much as we would like to pay them whatever they want, is what the townspeople could afford. And don't forget, you folks represent everybody in the town, not just the teachers and their unions. And that goes for all employees. So this should be the benchmark where people will say, you know what, we better think about it before we go to finalize this contract with a high increase.
Okay, Representative Flanagan here. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to this item?
Just quickly to
Anybody?
respond. Yeah, just quickly to respond to that. And again, I'll make this 1 or 2 sentences.
Mr. Cook, you got to keep.
Wayne Cook, one more time to Mr. Dietro. I get that, okay? And your point's well taken to an extent. But again, if you're going to put the Board of Ed and the teacher under this sort of scrutiny, then put everybody under this sort of scrutiny. That's all I'm saying.
All right, Representative Flanagan, if there's no further comments from the public and the RTM, last time for the RTM to speak, this will be a roll call vote. A yes vote is you support the contract. A no vote is you reject it. The clerk will call the roll on this, and Mr. Brockett, you'll assist her on this.
Okay, Representative Edelman,
Representative Edelman, yes.
Representative Alphone,
This is Representative Alphone. Can I pass it this time and come back to me?
sure. Okay, Representative Anderson,
Representative Anderson is no.
Representative Austin,
Representative Austin is no.
Representative Black,
Representative Black is no.
Representative Brockett,
Representative Brockett votes yes.
Representative Conklin,
Representative Conklin votes yes.
Representative Everson,
Representative Everson votes yes.
Representative Erlanger,
Representative Erlanger votes yes.
Representative Greenberg,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Representative, can you guys come back to me?
okay.
Thank you.
Representative Higgins,
Representative Hagan votes yes, but there's a lot of feedback and it's very difficult to hear.
And I'll fix it. Oh, there she goes.
Thank you. Representative Healy,
Representative
Point
Healy
of order,
votes
Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, I didn't catch the vote for Representative Hagan.
Representative Hagan votes yes.
Thank you.
Representative Henschel,
Representative Henschel votes yes.
Representative Hines, Representative Hines,
Representative Hine votes no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Ingraham,
Representative Ingraham votes no.
Representative Jackson,
Representative Jackson votes yes.
Representative Leach votes yes. Representative Preet,
Representative Preet votes no.
Representative Ricchio,
Representative Ricchio votes no.
Representative Sember,
Representative Sember votes yes.
Representative Shrestha,
Representative Shrestha votes yes.
Representative Sires,
Representative Sires, no.
Representative Sumro,
Representative Sumro, yes.
Representative Stepanik,
Representative Stepanik votes no.
Representative Sullivan is recused. Representative Torelli,
Representative Torelli, could you come back to me, please?
okay. Representative Toohill,
Representative Toohill votes no.
Representative Wells,
Representative Wells votes no.
Time.
okay, I'm going to go back to Representative Alphone.
Mr. Moderator, point of order, Representative Brockett here. I'm recording the votes. I did not get the vote for Representative Healy before we go back to the list.
Representative Healy speaking. Representative Brockett, and that is a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Healy.
Okay, so going back to the people who passed, Representative Alphone,
Representative Alphone, yes.
okay, Representative Greenberg, Representative Greenberg,
Representative Greenberg is no.
Representative Torelli,
Representative Torelli votes yes.
sorry, I didn't get that.
What was Representative Torelli's vote, please?
I didn't get it.
Representative Torelli votes yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, Representative Brockett, did you get a count?
Yeah, the count is 14 yes. This is Representative Toohill. The count is 14 yes, 13 no, so it passes.
Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Brockett. I tallied the vote for the clerk. I agree with Mr. Toohill's analysis. We have 14 yes votes and 13 no votes.
Okay, Representative Flanagan here. Based on that, the contract has been approved. Moving on.
Representative Flanagan, I'm going to leave now, but can I ask you a question? Can you look into why my video was disabled, please? Not this minute, but can you please? Because I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence that I put a graphic up there that somebody didn't want to see, and all of a sudden my video was disabled. I just want to go on record and say that. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cook. Item number 7.
Mr. Moderator, Representative Edelman, excuse me for interrupting. I'm just going to tell Representative Sullivan to come on back.
Okay. I'll wait for Representative Edelman. I'll wait for Representative Sullivan to come back.
He should be back in a minute.
So, Mr. Moderator, could I ask a point of information about the meeting process?
Identify yourself.
This is Representative Everson.
Representative Everson, go ahead.
When we meet in person as an RTM, we are all there visually in a room for all to see. When we are meeting here on Zoom, it is not evident to the people who have elected us in some cases who is present who is paying attention and who is listening to a meeting. So I would just request possibly that everyone respect the process and participate as an RTM as we would if we were meeting in person. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Representative Flanagan here. I'm assuming Representative Sullivan is back. Moving on to item number 7, to consider and if appropriate, eliminate the position of Assistant Fire Chief / Fire Marshal and create and fund the position of Assistant Fire Chief and position of Fire Marshal. Representative Conklin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Conklin. The Public Service Committee heard this presentation from the chief on January the 7th. And after all the long debates on the other ones, losing my train of thought here. One moment. Anyway, this is a reorganization within the fire department with the retirement of our prior assistant chief / fire marshal, who, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but probably did this job for 20 years. In that 20-year time period, both jobs have changed dramatically. And so therefore, both jobs have outgrown being able to be done by a half a person. And so the chief is looking to reorganize the department. There will be no cost to the taxpayer in this fiscal year and a minimal cost in the years going forward, and yet make a more efficient fire department. And I know the chief was on earlier if people have questions, but before I ask him to respond, the committee passed this request 5-0 with one abstention. Representative Stepanek abstained, and the other 5 on the committee voted for it. And I put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, motion on approve. Representative Flanagan. Representative Flanagan, this is a motion to approve. Representative Stepanek, would you want to give a minority report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I abstained in order to use the
Remember
time.
to identify yourself, Mr. Stepanek. Every time you speak, you must state your name.
Oh, I'm Representative Stepanek. Sorry about that. I apologize. I wanted time to reconsider the facts, and I have had my answers. I've received answers to my questions, so I'm now voting yes. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Flanagan here.
Yes, I'd like to speak, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's Representative Toohill. I support this, and I'd just like to inform everyone that this is the way the towns of East Haven do it, as well as Guilford. And I want to compliment Mr. Conklin, and I also would like to compliment the chief, Chief Mahoney. This was done, I believe, in a very economical way. And I also want to pay tribute to the former Deputy Chief and Fire Marshal, Sean Heffernan, who did an outstanding job representing all of us and doing a great job at the fire department for 20 years. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan here. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item?
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Brockett.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Brockett. I just want to extend my thanks to the chief for exchanging a series of emails and speaking with me with respect to this issue and the underlying issues. And I fully support the decision of the fire department. And I think they've done this in the most efficient way. And I'm proud to say that they've done that. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan or anybody else from the RTM wishing to speak to this?
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, this is Representative Preet.
Go ahead, Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We just went through an hour and a half, kind of a lengthy debate on the teacher's contract. So to just add a little levity to tonight's meeting, I had a brief discussion with Representative Conklin this afternoon on a different matter, and he informed me that I should be voting for this, so I will be supporting this measure. Thank you.
Representative Flanagan, thank you. Anybody else from the RTM wishing to speak? Anyone from the public wishing to speak? Anyone from the public? Hearing none.
Chief Mahoney.
Chief Mahoney, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to go on record to say I appreciate the time that the representatives put in to reach out to me and do their research. I enjoyed the back and forth, and I hope you will support this as a body tonight. Thank you.
One,
All right, anybody else from the public wishing to speak?
I'd like to speak. Mr. Flanagan?
You're the RTM, Mr. Toohill, not the public.
Well, I'm in both, sir.
You want to speak to this again, Mr. Toohill?
I do, sir.
Go ahead.
Right. I just wanted to say that, I think we should ensure that all these contracts come to us on the RTM, and because, I mean, we provide the valuable input. We also approve the pay raises and, what they get. And again, so all contracts of this type, I believe, from what I know, reading the charter, have to come to the RTM. They have to be approved by both the Board of Finance and the representative town meeting. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else from the public or from the RTM wishing to speak to this item? Hearing none. We'll vote on this item. Is there any no votes? Is there any no votes? Is there any abstentions? This item passes. Moving on to item 7, to consider and if appropriate. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. We already did that. Moving on to item 8, to consider and if appropriate, approve a transfer for the Board of Police Commissioners from regular salaries $4,558 to stipend $4,558. Representative Conklin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Conklin. And again, the Public Services Committee heard this item at our meeting on January the 7th. And this is a request from the police chief to pay an existing employee a stipend. And we have the money in regular salaries to do that this year, because we are going through an accreditation, which is a 3-year process. It's a very intense process, and many towns use a consultant to do this process for them and pay them in the $60,000 range to do the process, and or some towns have employees whose full job is to handle all accreditations, which costs a lot more than the $60,000+. In this particular case, we have someone on board who, one, writes well, and two, has technical skills to go through the accreditation for us at a reasonable price. It'll be a 3-year process. At the end of those 3 years, because you're going to go through accreditations periodically, we may reevaluate that position. But either way, it's $4,500. It will end up being in the budget next year and the year after, but well worth it. And I know the chief is on if we have questions for them, but I believe that in this particular case, the committee voted unanimously 6-0 to approve this transfer. And I put that in the form of a motion.
Motion on the floor to approve this transfer. Is any, this is Representative Flanagan. Is there any discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Brockett, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Representative Brockett, I just want to personally thank the chief and his deputy. I had some concerns over some of the technical issues with respect to this stipend. I met with the chief and the deputy. They were very professional about it. They addressed those concerns and got back to me, and I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Flanagan again. Any other members of the R.T.M. wishing to speak to this? Any members of the public wishing to speak to this? All right, if nobody else wants to speak to this, are there any no votes? Are there any no votes? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, this transfer carries. Moving on to item number 9, to hear a request from the town engineer for an increase in appropriation for the Branford Point seawall and wharf improvements, and consider and if appropriate, approve the finance director's corresponding transfers and resolution. General fund from fund balance, $225,000 to operating transfers out fund 700, $225,000. From fund 700, from transfer in $225,000, from seawall repairs public works $200,000, from seawall repairs public works again $25,000, and from seawall repairs engineering Branford Point 400 for a total of $450,000. Transfer and resolution from the fund balance. Resolved that the R.T.M. approves an increase in the appropriation for fiscal year 2021 general fund budget from $118,017,243 to $118,242,243. This increase will be funded through an appropriation from the fund balance and will be used to increase the budget for the Branford Point seawall and wharf improvements. Representative Conklin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Representative Conklin. And once again, the Public Services Committee heard this at our meeting on January the 7th. I'll go on record as saying anytime we can use fund balance or contingency to pay for a much needed project, I will vote for that 99% of the time because we're using money already taxed for. So we're taking $225,000 from the fund balance to pay for a project that's sorely needed. And in addition, we're moving money out of 2 different 700 accounts from Public Works and moving it into a separate 700 account under the direction of the town engineer to do this major project. And we have, at the end of Branford Point, a deteriorating seawall and dock for that matter. And I believe Representative Brockett can vouch for that because he's down there a lot and has been down there a lot over the last nearly 70 years, just so you know. He knows how bad the dock and seawall need to be repaired. The committee voted on this unanimously 6-0 for approval, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Representative Flanagan here. Representative Conklin, do you want to make a motion to waive the full reading of the resolution?
Yes, I would, as we did at our committee meeting, just the resolution as you, and we did vote for the transfers and the resolution as you read it.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Motion on the floor has been seconded to waive the reading of
Representative Ingraham, sorry.
Representative Ingraham to waive the reading of the full resolution. Is there any no votes? Is there any no votes? Any abstentions? Okay, waiving of the reading of the full resolution passed. We don't have to do it. So back on the motion again to approve by Representative Conklin. Any discussion from members of the R.T.M.? Any discussion from members of the public? All right, hearing none from either the R.T.M. or the public. Are there any no votes? Are there any no votes? Are there any abstentions? The transfer carries. The appropriation is approved. Item number 10, letters and petitions, R&O. Letter request for the review of the Code of Ethics and the letter examination of the POCD process. Representative Black.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This Representative Black. Again, rules and ordinances did not meet due to conflict with another RTM exercise. So I ask that this be re-referred and put that in the form of a motion.
Motion on the Representative Flanagan, a motion on the floor from Representative Black. Is there a
We
second?
do need a second, Mr. Moderator.
This is Representative Sullivan. I will second the motion.
Representative seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion to re-refer both items from members of the RTM? Any discussion from members of the public on the item to re-refer these two items? Hearing none from the public or from the RTM. Is there any no votes? Is there any no votes? Is there any abstentions? The item 10, both items has been re-referred. Before I go to adjournment, I would like to mention here, Representative Austin, this is our last meeting on the RTM. We thank you for your service to the town. Patty has accepted a position on the Board of Police Commissioners. So good luck on your new position, Patty, and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Patty.
Good luck, Patty.
Thanks, Patty. Good
I
luck.
just want to say,
Thanks,
I just
Patty.
want to say it's
Go ahead,
been an
Patty.
honor to represent the Branford citizens from the first district on the RTM, but it has been equally an honor to work with all of you. And I appreciate it and thank all of you. Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck.
All right,
Thank
Representative Flanagan here. This is a clue for Representative Torelli. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a
Patty
second?
second.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
I
Patty
second.
second.
We are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Goodbye.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.